Hello and welcome everyone to our latest webinar. My name is Martin Close, and this is the Martin Close Art School, online art school, I should say. Now, this lesson's going to be all about, let's just freeze this for a moment, just pause that. This lesson's going to be all about how to apply the first layers to an oil painting. Now, in previous episodes, we've touched on the importance of the charcoal sketch and the design stage. Let's just take a slurp of tea. I'm hoping my voice is going to last. Sorry about that. Oh, lemon and ginger, excellent. So, yes, we've touched on the charcoal sketch. We've in depth on that. And we've also looked at doing the Imprimatura stage, which you see before you. This is the Imprimatura stage of the painting. And we've also, we've mixed our colours. So we've got everything ready to go. What we're going to be doing today, there's very kind of, I think it's very simple to get confused at this stage. You might be thinking, oh, we're going to do a painting, which we are. But we're going to be doing the first layer of a painting. Now that means we're not going to go into detail, there's no need. We're going to be keeping it to the big shapes, lights, mediums and darks. When this stage is done, the next stage, which is the, shall we say, the complication stage, where we complicate everything, the big shapes become smaller and smaller and more detailed, for want of a better word, and that's when the painting comes alive. So this really is pre that stage, and it should take about an hour with me talking and explaining each stage, maybe an hour 15 minutes, a bit longer, but we're going to get through this fairly swiftly. We have a chat box open, so please do feel free to ask any questions, and let's get going. So let's start this up again. Here we go. And you can see I've gone rather unusually. Let's just pop that down. I've gone rather unusually into the big green shapes. You can see the slurp of tea. I've just gone into, you can see the palette is to our right. And we've got the canvas board, which is on our left, and I'm down here in the bottom right corner. So rather unusually for me, I normally have a strict rule, slurp of tea. And that is furthest away first. And if you're a student in mine, you're probably going, huh? Why is he doing the foreground? Well, clearly I had a slightly senior moment here. And that's why you see me doing the big shapes in the foreground. I just sometimes, you know, you just go in a direction and you just go with it. No big problem, no big deal, because all I'm doing is putting the big light, medium and dark shapes in, mostly darks at this stage, into the foliage area. So I'm far away from the sky. In fact, I couldn't get further away if I tried, really, if you look at it down here. So I've kind of started this painting with a bit of, oh, I feel like doing this. And it's okay. I constantly say to students, you know, you don't have to panic about doing everything in the correct sequence. It's ideal to do the furthest away first and then bring forward and forward and forward until you're right there in the foreground. But as you can see, it's not always the case. But fairly soon I switched to the sky, which won't be too long. Where are we? Let's have a quick look and see where we are. So, pardon me. Yeah, another couple of minutes, I think, on putting these dark shapes in. So the Imprimatura has given us the design. It's given us where the lights and darks go. And I'm just feeling my way around here. I've got you can see the photograph is actually kind of central to the palette. That's what we're actually painting. That's the scene I took in the walk up to Hardy's cottage in Dorset. Gosh, now it must be about 4 or 5 years ago. So probably still looks the same, but at the end of the day, it's a really interesting shot. I love the fallen down tree on this particular one. Now you can see if you squint at the photograph with one eye, you can pretty much see where I'm going. I'm putting the kind of medium greens in. Not going to detail, I'm just putting the kind of where the colour feels right is where I'm putting it. I'll soon be putting some of the very darks into this area. And I won't say softening, but I'll be too worried about putting light or medium and then dark next door. I'll be putting it over and messing it up a bit. You'll see as we progress through this. This is the first couple of minutes of this, and my voice is already going. Oh, joys. Right. So you can see I'm just flitting around. I'm kind of letting the brush dance. I'm not being too accurate where I'm using feeling more than anything, and obviously I've got my eyes open here, but I don't want to be painting each leaf. Does that make sense? This isn't the painting that anyone's going to see. The detail, the final stage, is going to be painted on top of this when it's dry. Now, we could do it wet on wet, but probably if we were doing this wet on wet and going for the whole thing in one go, I would be using probably a Venetian terps, which is a sticky medium, or some medium like it. I think my carding, I think my painting medium number 5 is again a sticky medium. If you're familiar with my carding's products, I would tend, I know Winsor and Newton do a liquid. I'm not a keen lover of liquid because it really, really smells. And especially if you're in a tight studio, small studio, you don't want a lot of smelly things which are really unpleasant going into the atmosphere. Now you notice I've now switched to the furthest away, which is back on track. I'm putting in the lighter sort of cloudy bits in. Now, you might think this is white, as in titanium, but it's not. If you refer back to the colour video tutorial on how to mix these colours, which we did in the last session, you'll note there's an awful lot of warmth in here. It's far from white. It's a kind of warm grey, bit of orange, and it's got a bit of blue and a bit of orange, which will obviously cancel each other out. More orange than blue, keeping it warm, and you get a warm cloud feel. Sorry about my throat. At least from here, no one's going to catch anything. Right, not uncontagious. It's just use the throat too much. I think I've talked too much when I'm teaching. So, again, I'm putting these areas in. Can you notice also, it's big shapes. I'm not too worried about detailing at this point. And I've switched to a bit of blue there. As you can see, I've got 3 values. I've got the light, the medium, and the dark sky colours. And the clouds go from light blue, darker blue. So that's what we're putting in. I'm just putting the shape of that cut-off tree in. And everything you see here, the students have when you start painting, you've got a lot of fear. Oh, I might mess it up. You can't mess it up. You can't. It's not possible at this stage, because no one's going to see it. All you're doing is popping in those big shapes of colour. Think again, I said this before, I know, like paint by numbers, sort of children's paint by numbers thing you can get in our shops. I mean, that's all we're doing. We got a shape. It's got a number on it, and we're sticking that number colour in that shape. We might wiggle the brush around to soften it a bit here and there, but generally speaking, follow the rule. Right colour that you see in the right place on the board in the right shape. 3 rights, and you end up with a right painting. Keep it really simple. Don't worry about the colours merging at this point in time. We've added a bit of solvent to the colour mix. It's just so it applies to the, or ticks the box, we could say, on the fat onto lean stage. Now you see I've gone straight, I've switched brushes, gone straight into the darks. Now look at this. That isn't black, it's blacky green, dark green. It's dark green with black added to it. And it looks like black, but it's not. Which means I can always darken it stage again. I can add some dark, or what's that word, detail into the dark areas if I wanted to, by just adding a bit of black from the tube straight in onto that dark area. It will show as being darker. But this is dark green, and I'm just literally massing that in as a shape. Now after about 45 minutes, we've had what, how many minutes have we had so far? 9, coming up to 10 minutes. After about 40 minutes or so, if we took a walk back, you'd see a virtually finished painting. Your brain will click and tick all the boxes and put the detail in for you. It'll become quite a nice little, slightly impressionistic painting of a forest. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, in fact, I know many people who strive for that impressionism in their work and struggle to get it. So if we do it by default because we haven't put any details in, well, great. And if you are trying to paint a bit more, shall we say, loosely or looser, don't use small brushes, use big brushes. The majority, let me show you some of the brushes I use on this. I've got them here. We've got a filbert. Where's the camera? Here we go. We've got a filbert, which is a bit of cat's tongue. Let's put that nearer to the camera. And again, using a large brush keeps the detail away. And this is for pretty much, I'm using one currently there, just to put in the big shapes. Another brush which you'll see me use will be this one. It's a chisel brush. Oh, I'm putting it the wrong way. Here we go. It's a chisel brush, and it's called such because it's shaped like a chisel. And it's great for doing edges, particularly trees. Another brush which you might see me use, but maybe only right at the end of this session, will be something like this, which is it's called an Egbert. And these brushes are from Rosemary & Co. Absolutely can't recommend Rosemary enough. I mean, yes, we're an affiliate site with a, so if you do buy any brushes from links within our website or videos, yes, we do get a thank you of 5%. That's not why I'm recommending them. These brushes I've used for nigh on 15, 16, 17 years now. And some of them are over 10 years old, and they're still great. And this brush here, which is the only soft little brush I've used, it's called a golden synthetic. Here we go. It's a little soft brush, and I sometimes use this to push one colour into another, or to complicate the shape a little bit, to make it a little bit more correct. In other words, I might put a mark here and a mark there, but actually they need adjusting by just pushing a bit of paint in up or down, and that's a brush I would typically used to do that with. So back to the painting, actually back to the tea. So where are we? We are coming into, all right, I'm just here, you can just recover my thoughts. So here I'm just dancing the brush into the dark areas. And if you look at the photograph above my head on the palette, you'll see the dark areas which I'm referring to. Now I'm trying to keep true to the shapes that I see. But again, like I said, I'm not too worried about getting it just perfect because I can tweak it on the next stage. The most important thing now is to get some paint on the canvas, and that way when the next stage comes, which is complicating these big shapes up into smaller shapes, doesn't matter if I miss a bit because I know the bit that I've missed has already got paint on it. Does that make sense? I'll try and say it again. If we didn't do this part, if we went straight into detail, the chances are I'm going to miss something. I'm going to have a bare patch of canvas because you can't paint every leaf on a tree. So by putting the big shapes and not worrying too much about any detail at this point, and overlapping the shapes so that they overlap each other, all of the canvas gets painted. There's no bare canvas or there's no underpainting showing, which means when I come to do the next stage, which is the detail, and I'm putting the detail in and I kind of miss a bit, no worries, because the bit that I've missed will still have green paint on it or brown paint on it, or it'll have paint on the actual surface of the canvas, therefore won't be noticed. And so this is a really kind of important stage. Now, sorry, this part here, you can see this light leaf or branch, leaf branch sticking out, and it's got an area of dark around it. Now, as I put that dark in there, you can see how it's grown a little. It's probably a little bit too dark now. I need to put some light in there, and you'll probably see me do that in a while. Now, again, putting some some darks in the top end, shaping the light areas of the green. So as I've got the light area of green on, now I'm going to use the dark to manipulate that shape to make it a little bit more accurate to what I see. And then here's a classic case of when you're painting, you lose yourself within your work. Your thoughts go, all the stresses of life go, especially if you've got a glass of wine, something close at hand to assist you. And if you're in the wilderness, if you're actually there, sat there in the forest, it's so easy to just disappear in your own thoughts. And so when you do that and you focus on what you see, you get the shapes a lot more accurate. When you're, shall we say, recording something, this is going to sound like a disclaimer, I don't want it to, because I'm quite proud of my mistakes and errors, and I love doing them so that I can teach you how to put them right. As a tutor, it's important. If you dig a hole, you'll now teach your students how to get out of the hole you dug yourself into. It's great. But you can see that area of light towards the left, just above the fallen tree, in fact just there where I'm about to put some light green in, that's in the wrong place. And I didn't see it until probably another 20 minutes or so. And then I saw it and then I did a correction. So when you do this, when you're painting live and you get a bit distracted, maybe someone talks to you, comes up, oh, that's nice. Oh, artist, you're in the woods. It's a little bit of a distraction, takes your thoughts away. All of a sudden you stuck a tree or a bush or whatever in the wrong spot. Don't worry, it's fine. It's all going to be okay. And that's the truth. There's no stress at all when you paint. Only fun. So we're now coming into some of those lighter green areas. And you can pretty much see where I'm putting that in. And I'm being generous with it because, see, a light colour is less dominant than a dark colour. So in other words, explain this to you a bit more. If I'm putting in a dark colour, I've got a dark colour on my brush, dark green, dark brown, or whatever. It takes a lot of paint to make that dark lighter. It's dominant over the medium and light colours. Whereas if I'm putting in some medium greens or dark medium greens or medium darks, put it that way, to correct the shape, I can just put some dark green in to correct the shape on top of those lighter colours, and that dark will take. The light greens won't resist too much. Depends on how much paint you got on the canvas, but generally speaking, you'll find your dark colours will easily take on your lighter colours and win. So if you're putting a medium colour in or a medium dark, don't worry if you get in the wrong place. You can put the darks around it to shove it over so that it becomes in the right place. And this is just experience of painting. Like I say, it's when you start a painting, you're kind of full of fear about messing it up. And as you become a bit more experienced, and I've had decades, look at the face, I've had decades of experience in painting. Very little plexes me nowadays. If I do a mistake, actually I kind of smile because it's funny, you know. It's just be happy with your mistakes, and just have fun correcting them. Is probably the best way of doing it. I've had students stamp their feet before in class and almost go into one and start ripping up the shrubs and throwing trees and branches everywhere. It's fine. It's okay if you get it wrong. After all, it's only a painting. The canvas isn't going to bite you, is it? So, just move on and enjoy it. It'll be better the next time. So now, anyway, let's come back into this. We're adding some more complication into that green. Remember I said to you it's a bit dark, that area? So I've added a bit of lighter green on top of the darks. And when you do that, if your light green is here and your dark area is there, well, this happens. Your light green becomes a bit darker because it mixes in with the dark, especially if we're using just a simple fluid of solvent or turpentine and or a little bit of linseed oil or something similar. It's only when you start using the more, shall I say, complicated mediums, such as Venetian turpentine and others like it, then you start to bend the rules a bit, and you can put paint on top of paint on top of paint, and it doesn't mix in with each other. But that's for another lesson. I'll probably end up using Venetian turpentine on the last stage of this painting, which will be the next webinar coming up, and you'll see what I mean by that then, because 2 words, Venetian turpentine. What on earth does that mean? Now you'll see here I'm starting to put some greens into the upper canopy of the trees. I'm not painting the leaves. Try to get this in. I'm just painting the shapes that the leaves make. And I'm trying to do it reasonably accurately. Yes. But again, we get it wrong. It's not a big problem, especially in a landscape of a forest. I mean, come back 2 days later, the things moved. The branches, wind's blowing a different direction. Leaves have grown or leaves have fallen off, one of the two. Things have happened. In extreme cases, it could have been a storm and the tree's not there at all anymore. So, don't worry too much about everything. Just try to get the big shapes in, and you'll find the little shapes will kind of look after themselves. So I'm using a slightly smaller brush here, as you can see, and it's a long, I think it's a long flat I'm using from Rosemary & Co. It's probably a number 2, I'd say, from looking at it. It's just dancing around. So bit of complication. Again, I'm trying to get the shapes ish right. It's unlikely I'm going to get it perfect at this stage because I'm just messing it in. I'm messing it up. I'm blocking those things in. And already it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Do you not think? It's looking a bit like a painting already. I mean, in some cases, you can almost walk away from it, call it a piece of art. We're not going to do that, but we could. Who knows? Who's going to tell you when a painting's finished? Now, you notice, I think I mentioned this on the Imprimatura stage, this tree, which is kind of central to the canvas, I made it a bit too wobbly and needed straightening up. And I would have done this in this stage. You'll see me do it in a second. I'll slightly straighten out that tree and do a correction. Right, now we're really getting into some of these greens. We're not quite halfway. We're at 24 minutes into the painting process. So we're going to just play with the greens. Light, medium, dark, add a bit of this, add a bit of that. Just bring out the shapes which we see. So if I put a paintbrush in and I go, oh no, it's too light, too dark, well, I'll change it and then stick a bit of a different colour in. This is all about seeing the truth, analysing what is there. Don't blindly just close your eyes and paint. Look at the colour you've put on. Look at the picture. Ask, is it too light or dark? It's probably going to be green because it's greens you're putting on there. So just ask yourself, is this the true colour? Is it could it go darker? Could it go lighter? If you're indecisive, it means it's okay. You can tell if it's too light, too dark. But if it's kind of, I don't know, probably it's because it's okay. It's near as can be. Just it's good to go. Now you can see what I mean by correcting the shape of the light greens by adding the dark. Well, you would have done this then because I corrected a bit of shape there, but I think it's still not quite right. It's sort of concave, but I've got it as convex. That sort of light bit of foliage just above the right-hand side of that fallen tree. It needs a bit of correction, and I'm going to be doing that, I'm sure, soon. Hopefully. If not, we can do it on the next stage, but it's probably going to get done. You can see here I'm just putting in some roughs, bit of pieces here. That mark I put in is a bit strong for the part of that painting, but again, no worries. I can lighten it with a bit of sky afterwards. It's not going to be a problem. Oh, look at this. I've just done it. But as if it's like, I'm painting it already. So I see a bit and I go, oh, no, it's a bit too dark. So I've corrected it with a bit of light. Now that will dry and then I can mess it up again, so to speak. Put a bit of more complicated lights and sky colours or foliage. It's fine. I think here I've seen some corrections I need to make within the canopy area, so I'm just popping those in. Another slurp of tea. I'll be glad when summer's arrived. What are we now? We are beginning of April. What's the date? Yeah, 3rd of April, 2023. It's only just stopped raining. Talking to you from the UK, by the way, if you're an international member, we've got memberships in all over the world: Korea, America, Africa, Europe. So, but we are in studios at the Martin Close Art School, which is based in Bournemouth, and there's options to come and paint live with me in class if you're in Dorset or nearby. We hold regular classes on a Thursday, Friday and Saturday currently, and we're just thinking of expanding that as well into some other options. So do contact for more details. The website hasn't got that information on it available, martincloseartschool.com, which you see just below the left on the left-hand side. That's our website for the art school. Please do check it out if you haven't already. It's a lot worse. We've got a fair amount of videos on there currently, but it is growing, especially as my voice is coming back and I can do more and more videos. And these videos are full time. The tutorials are not sped up, just like this. Okay, so now we can see these dark areas now going in, complicating some of that foliage on the left-hand side or the central part of this painting. And you can see that that's what I meant by the green was a bit too much. It was too big. Dark area now, pushing the greens back and correcting some of those shapes. Not going to be perfect because it doesn't have to be. There's another stage coming when this is dry. And if we were going to do, like I said, wet on wet and do the whole thing as an ala prima in one go, yeah, I'd be using a different medium, slightly different technique, and I would be putting the brush, shall we say, a little bit more carefully as to where I wanted it to go, because it won't be dry. So I need to make sure that the brush marking is a lot more accurate. But here we go. And that's the interesting point as well, brush marking. A lot of people think a brush is like a magic wand. You stick it in, you wiggle it around, you do all sorts. Every brush that I have, that I paint with, makes an individual mark. It's mark making. And that is an important thing to say when you're teaching to a student, because you don't use a filbert if you need a chisel brush. It makes it easier. Get the right mark in the right place. Now, come back to this painting. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm letting the brush dance. I'm almost like complicating it a little bit, even at this stage. And again, like I said, it's not the surface color. None of this is going to be seen by any viewer who views this painting. It's the next stage which is going to be seen. You see, I'm now correcting the shape of this tree, straightening it out a bit. And we'd be putting the I think we'd be putting the shape of the tree trunks in a while. Not sure. Tree trunks, yeah. So where we are with this, it won't be too long. Probably another. I think I'm dancing around with the greens first and the dark colours, and we will be putting these tree trunks in fairly soon. I'm bringing everything towards me. It's background stuff first. And where I just touched that green, I can certainly see it needs to go a lot darker, and I'm hoping I'm going to get some darks in there fairly soon, because it really does need to darken up. So easy to get lost in the detail of a painting, and really ought not to do that. You've got to enjoy these big shapes. Now, looks like I'm going to get out the path. Start with a light. Why do I start with light on the path? Anybody want to think about that one for a moment? Simplest answer is this. If I started with the darks, and I've got the darks in the wrong place, it's going to be tricky getting those lighter. Start with lights, and if I get the lights in the wrong place, it's going to be absolutely easy to correct. So I'm starting with the lights and I'm going to correct with the dark areas. And in actual fact, on this particular case, you're going to see me put these values in on the path, and then you're going to see me do the foreground area, and then I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to kind of blur it a bit because I don't need any detailing at this stage. I need it to be a bit rough. The pathway I will define the next stage of the painting process. I just got the lights in, as you can see that. It feels a bit warm, that's interesting. Again, it's something to correct as we go in, put some colours, so a bit of make it yellowier. Yellowier? Might be a word. I think it is, we'll make it so. Now I'm switching to the foreground. Now this is the ground area, then just as it disappears into the shadows. Now, I think I'm probably taking a bit of time over this to try and get it level. If I was painting for me and not a tutorial, I wouldn't really worry about the levels of the path. I'd put them in, and I'd mess it up deliberately. In actual fact, I probably wouldn't keep the path where it is. I'd have the path disappearing into some of the dark areas to make it more of a interesting painting, like, ooh, where's that path going, But I'm not. We're doing a tutorial, so I'm trying to get the path, the foreground reasonably in the right area. Sense of pride, I suppose. Here we go. I'm putting in some of the darker area now and just massing that in. I don't want to be spending too long on this foreground necessarily. The brush is right at the bottom. You can hardly see what I'm working on. But effectively, I just want to lock it in one colour. I can complicate it later. Right now, I need to get the canvas covered with paint. And if it's the right paint in the right place, that's great. If it's not quite in the right place, then that's okay, no big deal. It's maybe another way of saying this is that the worst thing you can do is to get no colour nowhere on the canvas. That's the worst thing, because there's nothing there. It's like when you're trying to find a colour or you're trying to mix a colour and there's no colour on your palette. Well, you can't analyse it. You can't say it's too light, too dark, too this, too that, or whatever. But if you got the wrong colour and you've mixed the wrong colour on your palette, you can go, oh yeah, well, that's too dark or too light or too blue, too red, too green, too whatever's. It's something to analyse, and it's much better than having nothing at all. So the wrong colour in the place on the canvas is better than no colour in the place on that canvas, which might sound a bit weird for a tutor to say to his students, but I'd rather you learn through mistakes than just spend your time like frightened rabbits in the headlamps of oncoming cars. Mess it up. Get it wrong. Ain't going to bite you, but you'll learn so much because then you'll have to put it right. It's really exciting. One of the things I really love to see my students do, not because I'm an unpleasant, well, I am actually, I suppose, but because if you get it in the wrong place, if you mess it up, then I've got something to teach you and how to put it right. So you're learning. But if you get it right, you don't learn nothing because you already can do it. For those of you musicians, I play a number of different instruments, and if I play the guitar, for example, a particular tune every day, every week, every month, every year for 20 years, same tune, I don't learn anything when I play it. I can do it. But if I try the Rodrigo Guitar Concerto in D minor, oh boy, trust me, I'm not going to get that wrong. But I'm going to learn. And this is a good attitude to have when you're learning how to paint. Don't worry about messing it up. Get it wrong. You'll learn so much more. Now, where are we? We are nearing the point where I'm going to go into the trees. So I've just corrected the path to straighten it out a bit. See, I wouldn't normally have bothered doing that for painting a bin for me, but it's a tutorial, so it's got to be there. And now you see, I've gone for lights. If you look at the palette now, on the top left of the palette, the light part of the tree trunk goes in. Again, same thoughts. If I put the dark shadows in and I get them in the wrong place, I'm going to try and lighten it. It isn't going to work so much. So by putting the light areas in first, if I get those in the wrong place, no big deal. The darks will cover. It'll be fine. So I'm just now putting this light trunk in. And again, if I go over the edge, I make it too big, too wobbly or whatever. I mean, my hand used to be really steady. Yeah, it isn't steady anymore. I'm great at blending. All I've got to do is touch the brush on the canvas. So when you get trying to get a straight edge, it might take you 1 or 2 shots, 1 or 2 passes. You get there in the end. If not, use a ruler. Just kidding about the ruler. Don't do one of those. There's no such thing as a straight line, so the scientists tell us. So why do we try to have one? So now you can see I'm just focusing on this one light, putting the light areas of these trees. I'm disregarding the greens. Have you noticed this? I'm actually putting that brush straight through some of the greens. Okay, so I'll stop there because it's a big patch of green, but not terribly fussed. Not terribly worried where it goes. Well, I'm pleased and relieved that my throat is still hanging in there. And so far, touch wood, we've not had any technical issues with the software or hardware, so it's always good to know that. Monitoring everything as I do this. Now, I think where you'll find I'm now just, I'm going to put this main foreground tree, and again, light. And don't put light where dark goes, obviously. I mean, deliberately. Try and keep it light where the light goes, darks where the darks go. It makes it easier to paint. Otherwise you are doing the equivalent of running into the garden, grabbing a handful of dirt, running to the lounge and throwing the dirt all over the lounge carpet. You're creating work for yourself. You don't need to. So try and keep it nice and simple. Right colour, right place, right shape on the canvas. It's great. So I'm just putting in some of these lighter areas. All my voice is going, hang on. And here we are now on this lying down tree. So light, and I can see it would probably, maybe I could be a trick of the values of the color balance on there, but I think the painting itself is actually good color. But because of the software, it's made it slightly cooler on the canvas or the image that you see. So the painting itself is actually okay. It's not as cool as it appears on this main screen. Might need a bit of tweaking in post. Now, I've gone for a slightly darker colour. Can you see that? So, got the light, put the light on, but now I put some dark over top of part of that light. And now I'm really getting into this fallen down tree. And fairly soon, you see, I'm leaving the darks to last because I know as soon as I hit the darks, it's going to come alive. I'm not going to get any resistance from these lights, and I'll start putting a bit of dark around them. we're going to yield to the dark, in other words. I still haven't corrected that sticky outy branch above where my brush is currently. So I really hope I do that. I'm sure I do. It'll be a slight embarrassment. If not, don't worry. It's still going to be a forest. It's just not going to be the right shape. Now, let's get some of these dark areas into this fallen tree. A quick look at the time. We're very close now. We're about 15, 16 minutes away from the end of this stage. And this hasn't been sped up. This is real time. So, you know, it's really kind of, I think, reassuring that you don't need to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on it, doing this stage of the painting. Just block it in. Big shapes, just like a paint by numbers. And so long as you get the right shape in the right place, it's going to the next stage is going to be easy. The more errors there are to correct on the next stage, that slows that stage down. But not by a long shot, because it's dry, stick the brush where you want it, and it's done. The mystery of painting, I think, we tend to overcomplicate the simple things. It's like, okay, I mean, I've had this before, like a sense of awe that I'm an artist with some kind of magic hands or magic brushes. The truth is, it's not the case at all. I liken it to a mechanic, and your mechanic knows how to maybe strip down an engine or a gearbox. If you've never done that before, wow, it could be really scary. Exactly the same with painting. Once you've done it a few times, you've learned, you've got used to the techniques which we're teaching, it makes it a lot easier. It's like the fear goes, oh, I know what's coming next. Okay, it's great. But to get to that part, like I said, you've got to mess up a bit. So now I'm putting in these dark shadows of this fallen tree, and I've just gone to the path colour, again, rich dark path colour, just flicking it in there. And I can see on the photograph where I am, it just rises up a bit. All good, as I say. Now, bit of correction. You can see I've made a bit of a mess of that edge. Dark brush, straight across. Look at that. Sharp edge. It's as easy as that. These aren't magic brushes. And these hands, trust me, they're not magician's hands. I wish they were, but they're not. Now, I'm really hoping I'm gonna go for the darks on these trunks, aren't I? Okay, I'm gonna have to wait a few more minutes before I just see this shape, and I just, oh, please change that shape to more of a concave shape on that branch. Shove it over a bit. It's too high and it's too far to the right. When you see something, it's like, niggles you. Never mind. I have to take a happy pill. Have some more tea. My advice as a tutor here, to literally hoping you're going to paint this not once but maybe twice, because if you paint it once, it's your precious. It's going to own you. Yeah, it's going to stop you painting it. Oh, I don't want to mess it up. It's so good. Oh, look, I don't want to put that next stage on. Looks great now. Whereas if you paint it twice, there's two of them on the go, where you can push past that point of fear, knowing that you've got one spare. And painting it twice is a great way to learn, because, oh, this was difficult the first time. Oh, it's much easier now. Oh, I'm learning something. So do think about doing this not once, twice. And don't do it too small a canvas. This is an A4 board. Make it bigger if you wish. Yeah, bigger's easier. Takes a bit longer, a bit more paint. But It's a lot easier to paint if you're painting large. Obviously, if you're 6 foot wide, 2 meters wide, whatever, that's a different story. But make it a bit bigger. It's more fun. Now, where are we? I'm really tickling away at this top edge of this tree. It's not quite right, and I know, and I'm trying to sort of smooth it over a bit. There's a bit of surgery going on, and this is that stage of the painting where you see this shape and it's okay, but it's not okay. It's could do with being a bit here, a bit there. We're at that stage. So try to stay relaxed, focused. It's not going to bite you. And keep true to the light and dark shapes that you see. Everything else will come. So let's have a quick look. We're almost at the point, about 4 or 5 minutes away, I think, from allowing the brush to just dance over this. I'm going to put these lights in, which I just see around the base of this tree, and then I'm going to be, as on cue, putting the darker shapes in, which will form this tree up. It'll make it kind of begin to look a bit like a three-dimensional form. The light, medium, and darks have to sing in harmony. In other words, all your lights need to be on one side, obviously. Unless you're painting something which is like the sun's central, because then you can have highlights left and highlights on the right on the other side as well, and inverted shadows. So your shadows are like opposite them. But where this is the light coming in from the left, so all the highlights are on the left, all the shadows are on the right. It's a lot easier and straightforward. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just trying to correct these shapes. I'm going to knock the base of that tree out, I think, in a minute. Not much, but just a little bit. If not, it'll be done on the next stage. I think when you look at a bark of a tree, you look at the shapes of the crevices within that bark, it's so easy to kind of go, oh, that's hard to paint. Simplify it, squint a little, get the kind of basic shapes in of the light, mediums and darks. And if you get that in from a distance, it'll look great. Then when you get those big shapes in the right place, then we can complicate those big shapes into little shapes. And that's when the detail comes, and that's when the painting starts to sing. So all you really want to do at this point, this stage, is make sure your big shapes are where they should be. And little shapes will, like I said before, they'll take care of themselves. Now, you see I've got a darker colour, and then there's a light colour on the other side, and then I've got this medium brush or maybe dark brush, and I'm just stroking the edge. And that gives me a softened edge. I've reinforced it with light just there. And you can see it's now, you can see where the front face is and the shadow recedes. All the edges at this point, probably best to keep them sharp and hard, even textured. You know, if you've got a dollop of paint which has got a ridge on it, which kind of sticks out a bit on the surface of the canvas, great, adds to the drama. You know, it adds to the sort of texture of the woods itself. Now you can see, look, I've got a bit of orange. I've touched into that orange. And the colours on the palette there, you might think that is a red, but it's not. It's a cadmium orange. So the colours as we come down, titanium white, cadmium lemon, cadmium yellow deep, cadmium orange. I've got cerulean blue, I've got sap green, and just hidden is going to be raw umber and ivory black. And that's it. All of those colours made all of these colours, which you see me painting with now. God, yeah, sorry about the cough. So again, I'm now putting the dark shadows in of the other trees. What I've done there on the fallen tree and the main tree is fine. It's fine. I can create a lot of fun with those shapes. Unblended, sharp. It's good. Tickling in a few areas here. These are kind of pointers as to, so when I come to do the next stage, I kind of know where these big shapes are, these branches. You can see I made it too thick, so I'm coming in with the dark. It's a lot easier to paint that way. Gain shadow down the right-hand edge of that tree. And a bit of just messing it up a little bit. In other words, touching here and there, it's going to all a bit of colour going in. So, and that's going to be making that pop and come alive. When the next stage happens and we start putting in the, for want of a better word, the detail, because we're going to be using this sticky medium of Venetian turpentine, and if you've never heard it before, have a look at it. It's Venetian Turps, Royal Talons do it, Rembrandt, or Royal Talons, which are a Dutch company. Very, very high quality products and a really good price. They do Venetian Turps, and also, like I said, Mike Harding, PM5, Painting Medium 5 is, again, another sticky medium, which is really good for painting fluorescent. Don't do a portrait in it unless you want to, I know, wrinkles and stuff on the skin. It's because the paint will, it's not gonna, you're gonna smooth it out. It's gonna have texture to it when you apply other colours. We'll elaborate on that maybe next time. Now you can see I'm just popping in some more of it. I'm gonna, as you can see, I've just messed that up. Look at it, the pile's gone. I'm happy with that. I can see where I go. I don't have to make any big decisions now. I can stick these bits and pieces and I'm redefining it slightly, but to no real big end. Not much detail at all. But almost at the point where we can add some smaller shapes. And I can see that coming very, very soon because the big shapes are all there. We've pretty much got it, covered. I don't think there's much of the painting which we haven't touched. I'm just softening that a bit, maybe make a few changes to that. Now, let's see, this is where I start, I think, to just do these few correction shapes. And now we're at the point where I think this brush is going to just do the smaller shapes, flit in, a mark here, a mark there. We're a few minutes away from being finished. There's about 4 minutes left. So, of this stage of the painting. So now what we want to do is to get the slightly smaller brushes and just complicate everything. Don't be shy of it, put that fallen down tree in. Don't be shy of putting it in the wrong place. I mean, it's a bit wide currently, but I can streamline that in and darken it down. Look at this. This is an egbert. That brush there is what we call an egbert. It's a long brush. It's great for doing his little tickles on the canvas. It doesn't leave a brush mark as such. It's a very beautiful brush, very old. It goes way back to the 16th century as a brush design. Again, defining where that light and dark area is on that tree. So I'm just allowing myself now a bit of time to let the brush dance over these areas. I'm just now trying to find areas which I want to change. things which catch my eye. One of the byproducts of, I think, painting and drawing to this kind of standard is that your eye trains itself to seeing things which are out of place. These puzzles that you get in newspapers and magazines, like Spot the Difference. I'm lethal at them. It's really funny that I just need to glaze over them. They're all there. Just they pop out at me, much to the annoyance of I think some of my students who come to class, because I'll just look up to them and say, "Well, have you noticed that in the left corner?" And I get this look, which it's difficult to explain, but I smile, and it's good to see them see these marks which are slightly out, because it trains their eye, trains the student's eye into seeing the truth. Now you see, I put a dark shadow under that root. I think it is. I think it's a root, and by putting the dark shadow in, it's just emphasised. It's given it form. It's given it a kind of 3D feel. Be very noticeable on the next stage. So we're tickling in some of these other shapes. Bit of complication here and there. I think we're very, very close. Few touches here. Looks like that light branch is going to get done on the next stage. And really at this point, I don't think we need to worry too much. I kind of feel that's where we are. We kind of finished this stage. We've got the canvas covered. We've got the big shapes in. If you squint, you can see that it's about right. And where it isn't, it's no big deal. We can correct it at the next stage. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Do have a go. Like I said, try and do it twice. Do two going on simultaneously. They don't have to be big. They can be A4. But you'll learn so much more when you paint two different stages. Do one and then do the other. Because you can feel in yourself your growth and everything coming together. So I hope you really enjoy that. Do like the, tick the boxes, as they say on YouTube, as it really does help us. And check out the online art school if you haven't already done so. The website is www.martincloseartschool.com, and send us a message and tell me what you feel. And that, I shall look forward to seeing at the next stage, which will be in probably a couple of weeks' time. We're having a short break for Easter, and we'll be back online. So until then, have a lovely evening. Take care. Bye for now.